Hey everyone, I want to go over today some results of the Cash Game Championship that Coin Poker ran, and if you're not aware, it ran for a little over a month, and the world's best cash game players competed, about 44 of them I believe, to different degrees over a month span. And I want to dig in with these results and see, do we have a new number one in the world? Because Linus is perceived by most to be one of the best players in the world. I think maybe some top players may debate he's 2 or 3, but he does show up on majority of lists of some of these top players. So there's this new player, a relatively newer player called Prodigy from the UK, who had a very impressive performance. And this is the data here. And you can see that it was really domination. People played a different amount of hands. So I screened out some people that were too low volume. Also, you'll see, and if you can help me out, I did my best to fill out this list, but some people I don't know and I couldn't figure out their where they're from or maybe their real name. So I just had the screen names for some of them. But if you know, let me know below. And really what I want to do is I want to focus on these higher volumes that were put in here. And you can see Linus performed very well for a decent sample size. For some reason, he didn't play as much after Christmas break, which I don't know why that is. But Prodigy, even with less hands than some of these players, it's really the win rate. If we look at the big blinds per 100 win rate is far and above most of these players, and this is they did give the results in expected value. For those aren't familiar, that basically adjusts if you go all in, say with a good hand and your opponent has a lesser hand and you're an 80% favorite and you lose, expected value would adjust for that. But it also adjusts for the fact that if you win the hand, you should only win the hand 80% of the time. So it does both sides of the coin. It gets a little closer to what the true number is, but there's still a ton of luck and variance involved, and that's really what I want to get down to today. Because this is the first time that we had like an arena of top players battling out, because before it's really these heads-up battles that get telegraphed live or the results are live, and that's great, but the fallacy of determining the best player by looking at heads-up battles is if player A is better than player B and player B is better than player C, it does not mean that player A is better than player C, if that makes sense. It's because people have different styles and strategies, and player C could give player A a bunch of fits. They could do something weird that just player A responds negatively to, but player B handles it pretty well. And that's kind of the flaw of determining the best player. So this is like the first time, and I give Coin Poker a lot of props, this is the first time that this is done, and I really hope they continue doing it going forward. So let me point out a couple things, and then we're going to look deeper into the data, because I want to figure out, is there enough data to say Prodigy is number one? A couple things to note is like some of these players on the bottom here, these are not bad players at all. Like I said, there is variance. They're also playing the best players in the world. I know Matt Merlinelli is regarded as one of the better players in the world. Some players on this list, same with C Lama. Some players on this list have both these players ranked pretty high. We can't say these are bad players. They definitely could have ran bad. And that's what I want to dig into here with confidence intervals. I know it's so much fun, but we really want to look at this. So focus here on confidence intervals. And first off, if you're not familiar, confidence interval is basically what this says is like if we simulated this results thousands and thousands of times, if we look at, say, the 95% confidence interval, that means that like 95% of the data should fall within that range of that bracket. So that's basically what it means. I'm going to focus on 2 standard deviation, 95% confidence interval. If you use 1, you can see like the bands narrow, which is great, but you're just not as confident that the data is actually within there. And we don't need to use 3 standard deviations. I think we're getting too precise. Yeah, it'd be great if we could do that, but you can see like the interval gets so wide, it just becomes kind of useless. So let me go into that. Okay, so here is the 95% confidence interval EV win rate of each player. And this kind of helps picture this a little bit better. And you can see there's a few things to point out here. Like I was saying, Matt Marinelli probably could have ran really bad. I never played this player, but again, some of these top pros regard him very highly. Even see Lama, and like their result could fall up here. You know, they could just be winning at 4 or 5 big blinds. They could have ran really bad. It's tough to say. And that's the first thing to point out is this wide band. And you can see Kevin's band is pretty narrow because he played a lot of hands. So the more hands you play, the narrow the range of outcomes from a probability perspective. Where in Lights didn't play as many hands, Davey didn't play as many hands. Great win rates, but you can see this wide range of outcomes. And the second thing to point out is very impressive. Even you can see there's a wide range of outcomes, but Prodigy's results are just really phenomenal. But with that said, with these sample sizes, it's still very difficult to make a decisive conclusion that he is the best in the world. But I will say a conclusion that we can take from this data, in my opinion, is Linus is not the de facto number one. I'm not saying he isn't. He could be still. I'm just saying that based on this data, like Asian Fleshy, Prodigy, and Light, Rigdack, like all these, Kevin, even like a lot of these players over here as well, like I think there's a lot of players in the conversation, is my conclusion. I don't think Linus is the de facto number one. And I do think that there's a lot of players in this field that made a strong case that they could be number one. What I would like to see going forward is if Coin Poker, first off, if Coin Poker can run this again, that would be amazing. This was so fun to watch. If you're a cash game player, I don't know how you did not enjoy this. This was an absolute treat. All these players were just had so many like these brilliant lines, so many lines that make you think all day about what were they doing here? Like, why did they choose this line? And as you start to reverse engineer what they were doing, it's really cool to kind of like come to light to see what they were thinking. At least you can never be 100% sure what someone's thinking, but it at least gets you close to like, I see what you're doing there, and that's really, really an excellent line. So I hope Coin Poker does this again. My suggestion would be, and I know it gets harder to implement, but if we can do something like 150, 200K sample, like open it for like 3 months and just let these guys battle. They're all competitive. Maybe some are not interested in putting that much volume. That's fine. But look what happens if we do a 200K sample. Let's say everyone play 200,000 hands, and let's just say the same win rates. Look at these bands. The bands have narrowed so much that if we had a 200,000 sample and Prodigy put this up again, I'm just assuming he may have sunrun. I don't know. That's why we're looking at the data like this. We just don't know, and he doesn't know. But if this were the results, in my opinion, Prodigy would be number one. Like, this is far enough and above everyone else, and that's where the sample comes into play. Even if we have something like, say it's Linus versus Asian, let's just take out Prodigy and Rigdack just for analysis purposes, and let's just say they're winning at 8 big blinds and everyone else is like 4 and lower. We may not know the number one, but we probably know like number 1 and 2, the top 2, and then we could have a treat, and that's where a heads-up battle could determine number 1 in that case. So I think if Coin Poker, I hope you run it again, and hopefully you can open it longer. If not, we can start combining sample sizes, and that will get us closer. The one issue is there'll be new players. The second issue is though people change their games over time. So like if we keep doing this every year and some people put up 10,000, some people put up 40 and 50, And over the years, like at some point, like if we're 4 or 5 years in, should we include the sample 4 or 5 years ago? So it gets difficult to say. So I just hope they just open it for longer and we can get closer, because it's the one difficult thing in poker is determining like the ranks of the top players. It's really just wishy-washy, anecdotal, based on what other players say, or if they happen to be in the limelight more, so they're perceived as a top player. Actually seeing data like this, I think is really, really cool, because we could get really close to actually determining who the best player is. And this is different than like sports or other things like that, where like the debates will go on forever and ever, but they were played in different time periods, this and that. And like this you can actually build a statistically significant sample size to potentially determine who is the best, which I think is really cool. So in summary, my conclusion is Linus is not the de facto number one, not that he is not the number one, but I think there's a bunch of players in the conversation. And I hope Coin Poker does this again, or somebody runs something like this again. And I would just suggest opening it for longer and getting larger sample size, requiring people to play more maybe. Tell me what you guys think. Who do you think is the top player in the world? Do you think there is somebody? Is there somebody maybe on this list that I don't have? Let me know. If you can subscribe, I'd appreciate it. And I will see you later. Bye-bye.